The Invincible Iron Man issues 5 and 6 find Tony visiting Emma Frost on Krakoa, learning a little bit more about Fei Long. Sunfire joins them and Tony learns that he knows all about Fei Long as Emma shares Shiro's memories with them, showing how Sunfire fought Fei Long on Phobos when he came to Arako's moon to establish a base there for Orchis and himself. Shiro remembers how the billionaire was just looking for a worthy nemesis that time, as Tony wants to know how he already seems to have powers, so the mutant reveals that Jean Grey snooped around and discovered that he used time travel to remake himself and harvest cosmic rays, feeding them through ruby quartz lenses much like Cyclops' visors have to give him powers similar to Scott's. Sunfire takes his leave to begin his new mission as Tony gets Boss to bring his armor in, thanking Emma for her information, but he offers her a warning, telling the woman that he has fought them all, from ones with money, ones with brains, and ones with agendas or grudges, but he thinks Fei Long is a triple threat and has all of those, and the villain is playing chess with them. Emma implores him to enjoy the game, asking if Tony has considered he might try and turn Tony against Krakoa, but Tony thinks that he's got that covered. Tony suits up, saying that Emma reminds him of someone, speeding off from the island. As he leaves, Tony learns that Fei Long has been getting his hands into Stark Unlimited's operations long before he actually took over the company, sending metal flowing through a Texas factory, enough to make 1,000 armors. Tony guesses that he's selling things to Orchis and he wants to go and find out, as back in New York, Fei Long comes into Stark Unlimited's headquarters for the first time, assuring all the workers there that their jobs are safe. His lawyer asks how he really wants to deal with this, so Fei Long tells him that he wants 3 lists made, one with the people who are fired, one with the people who will be paid to leave, and one detailing the few which will stay on. He wants the lawyers to deal with those who won't comply with these demands, heading down to the archives where his techs have set him up with files all on Tony Stark. Fei Long, however, wants to see the files on Howard Stark. The text says that his people are having trouble digitizing the analog files, but they are doing so as they speak, but some are on microfiche. Fei Long doesn't want excuses, wanting the information as he notices some serial numbers are missing. The text says that those numbers are referring to physical objects that Howard had left Tony, and they are in a hangar in Texas. Fei Long thinks that it's just another inheritance abandoned by Stark as he heads to the hangar in Texas, finding the entire contents of the hangar was given to Tony's research department. The texts don't think that there is anything mysterious about any of the things in the hangar, but Fei Long spots a painting, immediately hating it quite a bit. The tech knows that it's not really an important painting as Fei Long rips it up, revealing that behind the canvas is a series of film cans from Howard to Tony. Fei Long implores the tech that Tony will never know about this since it's property of Stark Unlimited and he owns it all now. Fei Long watches the films, finding that they are of Howard, who addresses his son, apologizing for spending so much time away from him, but his time with Nathaniel Richards has told him that he needed to be more bold with his talents, and to that end he's traded ideas with Adam Brashear and designed a way to travel to another dimension and retrieve a special metal that is outside of their periodic table, one that he has dubbed Miracle Metal, knowing that he'll come up with a better name once he actually has some in his possession. He tells Tony that he is leaving him his notes in the film canisters, hoping that if he's unsuccessful, Tony can finish his work. Later that night, Tony arrives at the hangar facility, cutting his way into the building and the labs there. He uses his armor to force open a blast door, ejecting from the armor and leaving it in the doorway, as he finds Fei Long is making Iron Man inspired Sentinels. Tony is suddenly blasted from behind by Fei Long and his new crowd control drone. The villain says that he plans on selling these drones to the police as Tony tells him that he doesn't know what he's messing with. Fei Long reveals that he's burning the film canisters and notes that Howard left Tony, telling Stark all about the contents of the film, discovering Tony's true inheritance. Tony tries to crawl away, but Fei Long kicks him down, telling him that he never went to Mars to see mutant accomplishment. He went there to see human failure, since Tony and the Avengers had Mars in their hands, and they just walked away from it. Tony tells him that Earth needed them, but Fei doesn't believe so. It needs him, having learned so much from Howard's message, like about a piece of metal that could remake the world. Tony wants to know what he found out, but Fei Long will only say that he'll learn of the discovery when the rest of the world does. He He asks if Tony has ever wondered why he hasn't been killed yet, telling him that he wants the hero to witness him be the man Tony should have become, and only then can he die. Tony doesn't believe that he will destroy anything important from Howard, but Fei Long reveals that he has a photographic memory, hence why he burned the film canisters after watching them and reading the notes. Fei Long seals Tony back in his armor as he blasts him back into the lab, sealing the door behind him as he tells Tony to start running, since if he's still in his armor by the dawn, his life and that of his friends will become very unpleasant. He tells the Sentinel to begin target practice, and the giant robot comes for Iron Man, blasting the hero with its superior technology. The blast sends Iron Man through the wall and out of the lab into the street as he tries to use his repulsors on the giant, but it barely scratches the Sentinel's paint job. Tony reroutes all the power into his thrusters and escapes as Fei Long tells the Sentinel to disengage and for Tony to keep running and tell the world what's coming, since they will see which of them the world will cheer for. Tony heads back to his workshop, resting up and thinking of the situation he's in with Fei Long as he drifts off to sleep. He wakes himself though with a thought, going to his computer to write it down as he continues his autobiography, remembering how he tends to think of stories not by the year they took place in, but by the armor he was wearing at the time. He remembers when, while wearing the Silver Centurion armor, he sparred with the West Coast Avengers, whose combined efforts make Iron Man tap out. General Dinger orders the mind control device to be turned off and the team revert back to their normal selves. Tigra thinks that they were just about to kick Tony's ass, but the hero will only tell them that that's classified information. General Dinger tells Iron Man that the mind control device they had is their future, and he was happy to demonstrate it by turning Iron Man's team against him. But he really wants Iron Man to recover some technology for him, planning on telling Iron Man's boss when he arrives. Later on, Tony Stark arrives at General Dinger's hangar, reminding the General that he's not a weapons maker anymore. Dinger knows all about Stark becoming some type of hippie, but this is purely for defense, and he's asking to see Tony because they have a piece of tech that has gone missing, and he knows Tony is the man who can relate to seeing his tech in the hands of an enemy, and he can trust the man since he's been so helpful with Project Deadbolt and the Magneto protocols. Tony remembers how he would often consult on extinction-level events and threats that represented technological leaps beyond their current capabilities. He thinks about Magneto being a huge threat at the time, using his mastery of magnetism to take apart tanks and other military equipment. The General reveals the countermeasures against the mutant are being installed into their sensitive locations across the world. Tony looks over the Magneto helmet they are studying, hoping that one day he'll be able to shrink the anti-Magneto tech down enough to put it into his Iron Man armor for his bodyguard. The General tells him that the helmet is an exact duplicate of the one Eric Lenscher uses, and it blocks telepathic signals, and Tony knows that the problem is how do they miniaturize it, since the General wants to make the tech completely unnoticeable and implant it under a soldier's scalp. Tony wants to know how he factors into this, learning that the prototypes they have were almost stolen by someone using a genuine security clearance and credentials from Tony's company. Dinger thinks that it's a mutant telepath, and right now, Tony and his Iron Man bodyguard are the only ones who he can trust to get the technology to Nick Fury. Dinger hands Tony a case of the technology, and Tony gets to work on his flight home, beginning to look over files from his company, fully suspecting industrial espionage, even when the General didn't. He finds the woman responsible is Hazel Kendall, never even hearing of her name before now, and she has an impeccable reference and recommendation letter. He considers reaching out to Charles Xavier or Beast for help, but first he needs to meet with Nick Fury. Tony dons his Silver Centurion armor and speeds off to New York, but begins to suspect something is wrong when he was told to meet Fury not on the SHIELD helicarrier docks above the city, but on a shady rooftop in Hell's Kitchen. Tony touches down and finds Fury, who appreciates his luggage service. Tony asks why they are meeting there, and Nick says that he hasn't cleared everyone in SHIELD yet, so he's working on the Psyblockers alone. He demands Tony give him the case, as Tony knows that Nick doesn't know who he was, and that's how he knew to activate the Psyblocker. Tony starts the device in his helmet as Nick is revealed to be Emma Frost, who regrets bringing Tony into this, but once the General became suspicious, she needed someone who could be trusted by the General. Tony is surprised that Emma isn't scared of going to jail, since no no one knows he's Iron Man, and since she knows, he believes that she has been in his head for a while. The White Queen thinks that she'll be in bed in 10 minutes, and maybe she'll be wearing the handcuffs Tony put on her until someone comes and lets her out. She knows Tony asks why he was told to come and meet Fury there, and it's because this place is the bar with no name. Stiltman and Doc Ock, under the White Queen's control, suddenly attack Iron Man, allowing Emma to escape with the case as they batter the hero around the street below. The Rhino smashes through a wall, tackling Tony down and telling Iron Man to leave Emma alone. Tony tires of the villain's games, grabbing a manhole cover and throwing it at Rhino, breaking his horn. Turk Barrett attacks Tony with a fire extinguisher, and Emma tells Tony to be careful, since Turk is just a simple mugger and the Iron Man has enough blood on his hands. Tony merely blasts the fire extinguisher in Turk's hand, causing it to burst all over him and knock him out. Sandman, Hydro Man, and Electro also join the battle, blasting Tony and sealing him in glass-hardened concrete. Tony thinks about how part of Alcoholics Anonymous is not diagnosing someone else, but that being said, he wished he would just get to meet part of Spider-Man's fan club at a meeting once. He begins to think about how he got out of bed to dot down every detail about being beaten up by Spider-Man's rogues, but that's not what really happened, since someone smarter than him took control of them and sealed him in concrete. He thinks about how his previous armors would have been done for, but the Silver Centurion was a lot stronger, and the lesson he's finally remembering is that he underestimated Emma Frost, and it cost him. Iron Man takes down the mind-controlled villains, using some of the tech he developed to take on the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to take down Stiltman. Doc Ock is the only one left standing and attacks Iron Man, smashing a piece of his helmet off and deactivating the Psy Blocker. Tony doesn't really remember the hit, but he remembers the aftermath since he suffered a concussion, and he thought that that was all the story was, but the truth is, with the Psy Blocker damaged, his mind was invaded again by Emma Frost, who demanded he forget all about Hazel Kendall and his battle with Emma and the Rogues, and it could have been any number of the myriad of criminals in New York who took the case from him. Tony thinks that this is going to be one hell of a book as he remembers the concussion Doc Ock gave him covered up Emma's mind erasure. He feels like he could write for hours about this, but he has more pressing engagements as War Machine returns to the garage with a ton of weapons, assuring Tony that he snuck in and out of the weapons catch without being detected. James tells him that this is the last chance he will have to change his mind, since after this, he'll be branded a criminal. Tony cocks one of the energy rifles, telling his friend that he'll be a criminal even if this does go right, and he has no choice, since to stop those Sentinels from going online, Stark Unlimited must die.